Another great and productive night for Ukrainian long-range aviation. On the night of July 21, Ukrainian drones once again swept over the enemy in a wide arc, from the Moscow region and Lipetsk to the Leningrad and Rostov regions. For the fifth night in a row, Moscow is reeling from sirens and shutting down airports, while in Lipetsk, the industrial zone near the thermal power plant and the metallurgical plant is on fire. And the warehouses of Russia's largest marketplace, Wildberries, are burning so badly that the losses are already in the billions of dollars. Today I'm going over the full report of last night's strikes across Russia. It was quite a night over there. So, let's get started. Let's count together how much poorer we've made the Russians, and once again, just the strikes on Wildberries alone have already caused losses of several $billion. And let's take a look at the overall picture. For Russians, the situation is complicated, but for us, it's very simple. Russia no longer has a safe rear, and even they themselves admit it now. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's analyze this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're moving toward the 300,000 subscriber mark, so I would personally appreciate your subscription. So, I want to start this episode with a short video that my subscribers sent to my Telegram channel Pechi News. By the way, the link to it is in the description of this video, so go ahead and subscribe. This video is about how disconnected from reality Russians actually are. They still don't understand what's actually happening, and for them, quote, it's as if there's a war.
It's not just that the word is scary, it's frightening. At night, everyone jumped up. No one could understand what was happening. They thought the war had already started. Everyone was terrified. Well, what is this then? Why on earth? Why did they fly in here? What do they want in Electrostal? Is this even possible? The city is right here. Is it even allowed to blow this up? What about all the people? Hey, you'll scare them.
How did you react when all this was happening? It was just scary. Honestly, it really felt like a war. That's why.
There's nothing you can say.
Is there any hope for the future? That this will stop happening? Or should we get used to living under this kind of tension? Well, everyone said that all of this would end in 2028. We're waiting. 2028. Well, originally when all of this started, everyone was saying that, so we get used to it. What else can we do? And those guys who are actually there in the combat zone, it's even harder for them. Sigh.
I just can't understand why this is happening, to be honest. Even though I have a higher education, actually several degrees, and I held such a serious position, it's very hard for me. I didn't know what to do, and I was so confused. Because I had already heard that all of the Moscow region was on fire. But you hadn't seen it before, right? I saw all those fires from my balcony.
Well, now to the point. I'll start with the Moscow region. That's where the main front of our long-range operations is right now. A wave of strikes on the enemy's capital region has been going on for several days in a row, and the warehouse complexes of Wildberries, Russia's largest online retailer, have been one of the key targets in recent nights. And this makes perfect sense because these hubs are used for both supply and logistics, which support the rear economy that feeds this war. That's it. When Russians started whining on social media, saying things like, "My goods worth millions of rubles burned down, no one will compensate me. Why did the Ukrainians strike the warehouses? I have nothing to do with the war at all." Look, it's very simple, very simple. If you sold those goods, you would at least pay taxes, which Putin would then use for the war against Ukraine, so everything is completely logical. Besides, this marketplace openly advertised the sale of drones for the occupier's army on its platform, fiber optics for these drones, various ammunition drop systems, military uniforms, and a whole lot of other military equipment. But here I'll go over in order what has been hit in the Moscow region in recent days, so you can really see the scale. Ukrainian drones successfully struck the Wildberries logistics hub and power stations located east of Moscow. There was a huge column of smoke rising almost to the sky. They hit the Wildberries warehouse in Kaledino, near Moscow, south of Podolsk. To Russians who come and tell me I put the stress on the wrong syllable, I'll say right away, I really don't care what some settlements are called in the Russian swamps. And if they didn't exist, I'd only be glad. In Podolsk itself, in the Lvivsky district, mind you, drones set an oil depot on fire. In fact, in just one night, they counted 5 separate fires in the Moscow region. A large logistics hub also caught fire in the Yuzhnie Vrata Industrial Park in the Domodedovo district, a complex with an area of more than 650,000 square meters. This is actually a separate detail that makes this target especially satisfying. As the agency's publication found out, the Yuzhnie Vrata complex is directly connected to the Talent and Success Foundation. Its founder is the cellist. The cellist is Sergei Raldugin. He is Vladimir Putin's personal bagman and a close friend. And the chairman of the board of trustees of this foundation is Vladimir Putin himself. So, Ukrainian drones hit property directly tied to the inner circle of the Russian dictator. Lipetsk was also hit hard on the night of July 21. Missile alerts and drone warnings were issued there twice during the night. So the enemy wasn't sleeping and was startled by every siren. After the alarms, a series of explosions rang out across the city and a large fire broke out in the industrial zone. And according to OSINT communities and monitoring channels, the fire was in the area of Heat and Power Plant number 2 and the Novolipetsk metallurgical plant. The area of the fire is about 2,500 square meters. The head of the Lipetsk region, Igor Artamonov, was forced to confirm a major fire, as he says, on the territory of industrial facilities. Well, that's a vague wording they usually use to hide the real targets, and in this case the target is quite significant. According to Ukrainian data, the target hit was a facility connected to the Novolipetsk metallurgical plant. That is, an enterprise that supplies steel, including for the military industry. So what's burning is what the enemy uses to make weapons against us, and in addition the combined heat and power plant number 2 basically provides the city with heat. So let the Russians get used to living the way they force Ukrainians to live, leaving them without light and heat for years with their strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Now finally let these Russians feel what that's like. But, as you saw in the video at the beginning, they are completely detached from reality. They have no idea what's going on. Especially that old lady. The old lady amused me, the one who says, "What is this? Are you out of your mind? People live here and you're launching drones. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" I can't imitate that accent, but you get the idea. And at the same time, according to Russian media, after the alert was announced, the industrial zone near Lipetsk and the industrial park in the Leningrad region caught fire. By the way, our Ukrainian drones operated quite extensively. From the south all the way to St. Petersburg, hundreds of kilometers apart from each other. In short, they struck so that it would burn everywhere. And a separate pleasant piece of news. Moscow has been fending off drones for the 5th night in a row. Moscow Mayor Sobyanin routinely reported that the air defense shot everything down on the approaches to the capital. But there's no point in believing their reports. However, there is one fact they still couldn't hide. Operations at Domodedovo and Zhukovsky airports were halted again, flight restrictions were introduced, and every such night means a paralyzed aviation hub, scheduled flights. And a clear reminder to Muscovites that the war they supported has reached them as well. And then we see these faces of whining Russians in airports on social media, and now they'll be trembling in the corridors because of the explosions. Rostov Oblast was also hit. In the village of Kamenolomny, debris from a drone caused the roof of the railway station to catch fire. But what's more interesting are the consequences for their logistics. According to Russian railways, they had to extinguish the fire at the railway infrastructure facility with a special fire train. This shows the scale of the incident. As a result, 26 passenger trains were delayed for up to 4.5 hours. Drones were also operating over Novoshaktinsk, Shakhty, and Novocherkassk. The railroad is, after all, the circulatory system through which the enemy transports equipment, ammunition, and cannon fodder to the front. I met those Russians who are pushing onto the holy Ukrainian land. And especially in the Rostov region, there's all the more reason to strike there because it's very close to Ukraine. And now let's talk about money separately. Those very losses of the Russians who so actively support the war or still don't understand what's really going on. Let me remind you, Wildberries is the largest marketplace in Russia. Its logistics centers are huge warehouses packed to the brim with goods. That's what we're going to talk about. When a hub covering hundreds of thousands of square meters burns down, well, the losses come from several sources at once. Burned goods, the building itself with its equipment, disrupted deliveries and downtime. Those are also losses. And it's telling that not only Russians are whining now, but the company Wildberries itself as well. Wildberries co-founder and CEO Tatiana Kim called it a terrible night for Russia and for the entire company. Well, of course it's terrible when your warehouses are going up in flames one after another. And Forbes magazine calculated that on the very first night of the attacks, July 18 drones targeted 2 large Wildberries warehouses in Elektrostal near Moscow and Kotovsk in the Tambov region. And just for that night, July 18, the losses for the company and Russians as a whole are estimated at $2.5 billion. Once again, that's just for the night of July 18. Next, I'll quote Forbes. It's still difficult to estimate the company's own losses. Experts believe that about 30 billion rubles will have to be spent to restore the warehouses. And a cautious, I emphasize, a cautious estimate of the inventory stored there is up to 170 billion rubles. That is, to fully cover the damage, even according to preliminary estimates, an amount exceeding the net profit of the entire Wildberries RUS group will be required, which in 2025 amounted to 175 billion rubles. That means everything earned in 2025 will have to be spent on recovery. The warehouse in Elektrostal, one of the largest logistics centers of Wildberries with an area of 250,000 square meters, and the warehouse in Kotovsk with 108,000 square meters was put into operation literally just last year. And now the merged company Wildberries Rus, also called RWB according to experts, has lost almost 10% of its warehouse real estate. And our attacks are explained very easily and simply. Zelensky and the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine state that the long-range strikes are hitting significant logistics facilities, and the attacked hubs were used by the enemy to supply components. Supplying components for the production of drones and navigation equipment. Let me say right away, if the Russians are watching and ask, why did you strike? This is your own doing. Let me remind you, those savage Russian occupiers have been destroying Nova Pochta hubs in Ukraine for several months in a row. Postal hubs. How do you like that? So, you need to understand that these Wildberries warehouses are not civilian warehouses, as Russian propaganda is screaming right now, but links in the military supply chain. Everything is justified, and as you can see, the losses are significant. And by the way, of course, no one is going to compensate Russians for lost goods. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll repeat it once more. The Kremlin and the entire Russian leadership don't care about the ordinary Russian at all. And that's why the main conclusion for today is this. Ukrainian drones have opened up a new strike zone on the territory of the Russian Federation. In other words, Russia no longer has a safe rear. Just last night, strikes hit a vast area all at once. Moscow region, Lipetsk, Leningrad region, Rostov, Vladimir, and so on and so on. In other words, the geography is quite extensive. This is no longer the border area, this is the deep rear. The rear is the industrial and logistical heart of the country. When things are burning, both 40 kilometers from the border and hundreds of kilometers inland in a single night, this means that the Russians no longer have a rear in the former sense. The result? The Moscow region over the past couple of nights. These are burning Wildberries warehouses, a burned-out oil depot in Podolsk. The burned-out Yuzhny Vrata hub, which is linked to Putin's coffers, also burned down. In Lipetsk, a fire covering 2,500 square meters near CHP2 and the metallurgical plant which produced steel for their weapons. And in Moscow, the fifth night of drone attacks, stops in Domodedovo and Zhukovsky, Rostov region, a burning train station in Kamenolomny, and 26 delayed trains. Leningrad region and Vladimir, they were hit too. In general, the losses, especially for Wildberries, are already in the billions of dollars. That is Ukraine. Methodically, it is bringing the war back to where it came from, that is deep into the Russian rear, and it's doing this not just in isolated spots but across a wide area, and all in one night. Well, and the Russians, like a dumb herd, still don't understand what's actually happening. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.